Welcome to everyone hopping on. I am so glad that you are here for Be Confident in Difficult Conversations. We're going to get started in just a moment. And in the meantime, I want you to put away one distraction and write down one intention for our time today. Okay, welcome again to Be Confident in Difficult Conversations. This class is going to be so useful because it's going to set you up for more productive conversations the rest of the year. It's going to help you resolve conflicts. It's going to help you give better feedback to your team, and it's going to clear up all of those bottlenecks at work. And not just this year, it's going to help you do that for the rest of your career. So grab a paper and pen because you're probably going to want to take notes. So welcome to everyone who has just hopped on. You are in the right place. If feedback conversations make you lose sleep for days, and if that's you, put sleep in the chat. You're in the right place if you worry about hurting people's feelings. And if that's you, put feelings in the chat. If you don't want to be labeled as aggressive, put aggressive in the chat. If giving feedback is something that you avoid, like the plague, put plague in the chat. See a lot of plagues. If you avoid setting boundaries because it makes you feel really uncomfortable, put boundary in the chat. If you hate talking about money or negotiating fee, put dollar signs in the chat. Yes, I see a lot of dollar signs. That is just blowing up the chat. And if you plan to say the hard thing, but then you chicken out every time, put chicken in the chat. So there are a lot of different situations where you have to have hard conversations. And if I missed a particular situation or scenario that you're thinking about, put it into the chat. Because whether you relate to one of these examples or whether you relate to all of these examples, having difficult conversations is an essential skill as a leader, and I am going to help you do that today. So here's what to expect in this class. There are going to be lots of ways to interact in the chat. You can ask questions at the end. And I'm going to cover 3 stress responses that are derailing your conversations, why these responses lead to so much overwhelm and self-doubt. I'm going to teach you the 3 most important skills to navigate difficult conversations successfully. And you're going to leave knowing why these skills are going to increase trust with your clients and team. And for those of you who want to know how we can work together and how I can help you build your confidence as a communicator and a leader, I am going to share that at the end, just before the Q&A. So welcome again to everyone who's hopped on. I am Madeline Schwartz. I'm a certified communication coach, and I have helped hundreds of professionals just like you build confidence as a communicator and learn how to navigate conflicts with ease. And before I started my business, I designed window displays, experiential marketing events, and retail environments for multinational brands like Coach, Armani Exchange, Diesel, Luxottica, Nike, and Adidas. And I learned how to get a message across in seconds. I started off as a designer, and then I moved into project management and account management. And what that means is I was the liaison between clients and the creative team. So if a client was unhappy or we had to deliver bad news that a project was running late or over budget, that was my job. And if I had to deliver constructive feedback to the creatives, that was also my job. So I've had a lot of experience navigating difficult conversations with a lot of different types of people. I also have been in your shoes. Communication was once my biggest struggle. I used to avoid conflict. I constantly felt frustrated because I didn't know how to express my ideas. And I had a terrible fear of public speaking. And getting over that fear was the single most liberating experience of my adult life. And it's why I'm so passionate about helping other people transform their communication skills. Because increasing your confidence as a communicator allows you to advocate for yourself. It allows you to get your ideas across in meetings. It helps you manage your clients more effectively. It helps you lead your teams and ultimately create change in your organization. And my promise for today is when you implement the 3 skills that I'm going to teach you, it's going to improve your relationships, it's going to increase your influence, and it's going to make you stand out as a leader. All things that can change the trajectory of your career just by focusing on one skill. So that's more about me. And I'd love to hear from you what you want to learn today. So we're going to jump into the 3 common responses that send difficult conversations off the rails, where communication really starts to break down. Response number 1 is that you get defensive. So imagine that you're presenting in a meeting, someone asks you a question, and instead of hearing out their concern, you immediately jump down their throat and go into convincing mode. You raise your voice, you tell them why your idea is the best idea and the only way forward. And when you do this, you shut off any opportunity for collaboration. I was just talking about this with a client at a San Francisco tech firm, and one of her cross-functional partners didn't agree with the direction that she was going on a project. And instead of finding out why, she was really quick to shut him down and tell him not to worry. And this just perpetuates an argumentative culture. It doesn't make anyone feel better or more relaxed when you tell them not to worry, because when people don't feel heard, they just come up with more and more concerns. And the result is this escalates the conflict. So that is the first response that really doesn't help you in difficult conversations. Response number 2 is that you shut down. So you could be in this same meeting presenting creative ideas, but this time when someone voices a concern, you shut down. You assume the meeting is over, you go quiet, you give up, your posture shrinks, and you have left the building, even if you're still sitting in the meeting room. Raise your hand if you've ever done this. I've definitely done this. And the result of this is that your work gets overlooked because you feel powerless and resigned to affect change. And I was just talking about this with a client who realized that by thinking she was powerless, she was giving up any of the influence that she does have in a situation. So that's response number 1 and 2, where you either argue and defend yourself or you shut down. And response number 3 is that you justify or over-explain. So raise your hand if you're an over-talker, if that's your habit when you get nervous. Yeah, I see a lot of hands up. So the problem with the over-explaining is that it doesn't make people feel better. It usually just makes them feel worse because they are angry that you're taking up more of their time. It tends to be pretty repetitive and just a long and windy way of invalidating people's feelings and telling them that they're wrong. And that, again, doesn't de-escalate conflicts. And the result is that when you're doing all of that talking, you're not listening, and you can miss out on the really critical details that you need to overcome objections and move projects forward. So the reason that you're getting stuck in these three responses over and over again, repeating the same pattern, is that you expect others to respond more negatively than they may. And there's actually some research that Adam Grant just was talking about, and this pertains to personal relationships with partners, but I'm sure it also applies to relationships at work, is that when you expect others to respond negatively, then you plan for the worst. So you think you know the outcome before you even start the conversation, and that means you either come prepared for battle, like bracing for the worst, or you put off or avoid the difficult conversation because you're resigned to it not going your way, in which case, why bother? And what this creates is a lot of extra stress. There is so much energy in unmade decisions and unhad conversations. And while you are putting them off or avoiding them, the problems are compounding. You're just perpetuating your own fear of conflict and letting lots of resentment toward your colleagues or your clients or your family members or your friends build up. And that has a negative impact on relationships. So here's what you need to do if you want to resolve conflicts with ease. First, you need to decide what it is that you want to convey in a conversation. So I have a template that I use with all of my clients. It's something that you can actually grab on my website, MadelineSchwartzCoaching.com. And this is going to help you to spend a few minutes planning ahead of time. That can save you hours and hours of frustration or additional meetings on the back end. And this is important because when you're not clear, it's really not clear to anybody else. And so one of my clients, she's a VP of merchandising. We were prepping for her performance reviews for her team, and she was feeling really nervous about having to give some tough feedback to one of her team members. And we strategized ahead of time, because the same feedback, depending on how you deliver it, can sound like, this is your final warning and it's time to shape up, or it can sound like, I'd like to promote you, and these are the three things that need to change in order to make that happen. But often people want to convey the second message, but it comes out sounding like the first because they don't do the work ahead of time. So it pays to do a few minutes of planning and grab that resource on my website, MadelineSchwartzCoaching.com, get clear. And then once you have that clarity, these are the three skills that you want to utilize when you get into the conversations. So skill number one is to be curious. Harvard Business Review has this great article about the business case of curiosity and why it's so vital within companies. Because curiosity improves collaboration, it increases creativity, it allows you to see different perspectives, and those things help you respond in difficult situations. They help lower your defenses, and that's a really important thing when you're thinking about treading into these more challenging, sensitive topics. So one of the ways to exercise your curiosity is to ask questions. And you can ask questions both of yourself, like what are you feeling and thinking in the moment? And then you can also ask questions of other people. And I'm just going to tell you like a funny personal story here, because when my son was in first grade, he was having hour-long tantrums 5 to 7 nights a week. We were just in this really difficult phase of parenting and family life. And he was constantly complaining that we didn't treat him well. And this usually elicited an adult response of, if you only knew how good you had it. And that definitely didn't solve the problem. And so, we just continued repeating this night after night until one day I really stepped back and just took it as his truth. We didn't treat him well. And then I asked him, like, how don't we treat you well? And his answers were incredibly insightful because he was angry that we didn't let him eat candy, let him watch TV, or take treats to school. And then we were able to solve this in 15 minutes flat. Like, his solution was that he gets to take cookies to in his school lunch twice a week. And suddenly our whole dynamic changed. So imagine if you did this with your teammates, if you were curious and just accepted what they were saying as their truth and proceeded with asking curious questions from there. One of my clients, he was really frustrated with his team because they had repeatedly sent out some client reports that had mistakes in them. And he wanted to get the message across that mistakes were totally unacceptable and he expected more at their level. And what I shared with him was that, taking that approach of being really stern was cutting off the opportunity to have a conversation and really find out what was happening with this person, right? Like, were they overloaded? Did they have something going on personally that was, taking their focus away from work? And if you're not asking questions, you are cutting off the possibility of solving that problem. So good questions are a way to exercise your curiosity, and just remember that not all questions are created equal. So skill number 1 is curiosity. Skill number 2 is listening. I'm just going to take a sip of water as we get into skill number 2. So I want you to rate your listening skills on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being your ears are your best feature, and 1 being that you love the sound of your own voice. I see a lot of 6s, a lot of 8s. I see a 3 and a 4. I appreciate your honesty. So listening is 50% of communication, and yet it gets treated like a forgotten cousin. And if you show me a good salesperson, a savvy negotiator, a trusted leader, a collaborative team member, I'm going to show you a good listener. So don't overlook the power of listening. And remember that if you're planning your response, if you're typing or filing your email while you're talking to someone, you're not actually listening to them. And if you are listening, but your arms are crossed and you're leaning back and you're squinting, you're listening with a really skeptical mind. And so you're probably still not approaching the situation with an open mind where you can really hear what other people are saying. And that's important when you're thinking about how to de-escalate tense situations and how to really help, like, hear what people are saying to you so that you can solve problems. And so a concept I teach all of my clients is called listening with all of your senses. And it's a way of tuning in to all of the nonverbal information that you can get when you are listening on a deeper level. So that's skill number 2, listening. And skill number 3 is empathy. So empathy is important because where conversations normally break down is when we argue with people or invalidate their feelings and tell them why they are wrong. None of those things solve problems, build consensus, or are likely to get you to the result that you want. And so the power of empathy is being able to acknowledge someone's reality without actually agreeing with them. So when you're exercising empathy, you're not going to argue, no matter how much you disagree or dislike their perspective. And this requires a tremendous amount of self-control and discipline. And it's often where people blow it in negotiations or in difficult conversations because they want to be right and they really want the last word. But again, arguing and telling people why they're wrong is not going to help. So your job is to listen and acknowledge whatever the other person is saying. And it's a skill called tactical empathy, something I learned from Chris Voss, who wrote this incredible book called Never Split the Difference. And he was the head hostage negotiator for the FBI for 15 years. And it's definitely a book that I recommend. And this is also a skill that I teach all of my clients because it is the number one thing that's going to help you de-escalate in tense situations, because when people feel heard, it takes all of the wind out of the sails and it just creates more space to actually have like a logical conversation where you can come together and collaborate. So I'm going to pause for water. All right, so again, the skills are curiosity, listening, empathy, and these are skills that keep you present in the moment. Like the reason that they can transform the entire trajectory of a conversation is that they give you something to do besides whatever your default reaction is of, you know, either over explaining or shutting down or arguing. So they keep you present in your body, and that gives you more presence in the conversation, which increases your creativity. It increases your critical problem-solving skills. It allows you to think more logically and have greater influence over situations. And the result that that creates for you is that you're going to stop fearing conflict. You're going to stop harboring resentment, stop avoiding problems at work, and instead, you're going to be able to build consensus around your ideas. You're going to feel more agency to influence situations, and you're going to build more trusting relationships with your teammates, with your manager, and your clients. And what people think they need before they start a difficult conversation is the perfect script for the perfect time or a long list of bullet points to answer any potential concern. But those are not the things that persuade people. What you really need is practice, a willingness to feel temporary discomfort in order to create that longer term gain and trust. And you need these really essential communication skills. So to recap, when you have to give constructive feedback to a colleague, or if you have to deliver bad news to a client, or address a conflict with someone on your team, or maybe address a sensitive situation with your higher ups, what you want to focus on are number one, curiosity, number two, listening, and number three, empathy. And when you do that, it's going to build more trust, not just with your clients and team, but it's going to build more trust in you, because you are going to feel more capable of handling these difficult conversations. So that's what I wanted to teach you today. I am so excited for you to implement what you learn and take this into your next difficult conversation. I also know that for many of you, you have a deep-seated fear of conflict and speaking up at work, and that is something that I can help with in coaching. If you want hands-on guidance integrating these skills into your everyday communication, I invite you to book a discovery call, and we can talk about how I can help you in my one-on-one coaching program, the Confident Communication Accelerator. because we can spend that hour talking through your biggest fears, your biggest roadblocks, and what's in the way of you achieving your goals at work. I'll share how I can help you build more confidence in your communication and your career. And you're going to leave that call feeling so relieved, knowing that there's a simple solution and I can help you develop the skills that you need by the second half of this year. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat where you can book your discovery call and think about how changing your communication is going to make you show up more powerfully at work, how it's going to create, or rather increase your confidence. And if that's something that you want help with, book a time to talk to me. The amazing thing about investing in communication skills is that it pays dividends the rest of your life. One of my clients came to me because she wanted help with her presentation skills in a new job. She was, having trouble finding her footing in this new position. And when we started, she was working a lot of extra hours, staying up until midnight working because she really felt the need to prove herself. And when we got to the heart of why this was happening, it was really around feeling belonging at work. And when we were able to address that and creating belonging for her as a woman in a male-dominated space, it completely changed how she showed up at work. It changed her confidence in her own creative decisions. It changed how she was using her time. She started leaving work on time, not working, late at night after she put her kids to bed, and just feeling much more confident in leading her projects and developing relationships with her clients. And, earlier this year, she actually ended up getting laid off from that job, but she felt so confident in her interviewing skills and, in her own creative expertise that she had no problem finding another job. She felt super confident in interviewing, and she got 3 job offers in 3 months. So again, for anyone who wants help building your confidence as a communicator and as a leader, and if you want help strategizing how to approach the difficult conversations in your work life, book a discovery call with me. We'll spend an hour mapping out exactly what's holding you back in your professional communication, how to work through fear, and the skills and the mindset that you need to build your presence and confidently handle conflicts at work. So you can use the link in the chat, or by the time we get off this call, you'll find an email from me and there will be a link to book in there. And before I start taking audience questions, I just want to address 3 of the biggest reasons that you might think this sounds like exactly what you need, but still be hesitant to sign up for a discovery call. So number 1 is that you're worried it might take years to fix everything you want to change about your communication. And just reflect for a moment if that's you. And what I want to share is that building your communication doesn't take a lot of time. It takes practice and knowing what to do with your time. And I teach all of my clients ways to build their communication skills in just 10 to 15 minutes a day. And I work with clients for 4 months one-on-one so that you have time to learn the skills, integrate them into your daily practices, evaluate what's working and what's not, and we can refine them and hone the box of tools that's going to work best for you. So you get to practice them in your difficult conversation and develop an entirely new set of skills and beliefs around yourself as a communicator. The second reason that you might be thinking this would be helpful to you in your career, but you're not sure if you want to book, is that you think it's going to be easier at another time, after your kid's birthday, or at the end of the school year, or after you get that next work certification, or after a vacation. And here's the thing, there's never going to be an easier time. There's always going to be a reason not to do it. But every day that you wait, you're letting communication be a source of stress and not solving this very expensive problem that's causing you a lot of angst and frustration at work. And whenever we put off a problem, it's always going to be waiting for us on the other side. And the third reason that you might be feeling a little hesitant to book a time to talk to me is that you don't trust yourself to get the result. And part of what you will learn through coaching is how to trust your own decisions and feel certain that you're going to follow through and get the result that you want. And the way I think about communication is it's a series of decisions. You're constantly deciding when to speak up, when to hold back. And when you get better at making decisions in one area, it strengthens your decision-making in every other area. So I encourage you to go to your email right now, sign up for a free discovery call with me, and we will map out your plan on how to increase your confidence as a communicator and the exact skills that you need to learn and implement to feel more confident at work as both a communicator and a leader. So let's jump into audience questions. All right, so someone wants to know, I don't speak directly and try to say as many positive things as I can. And I'm so glad you're saying that, because I'm sure a lot of people relate to this, that we've been taught to shy away from conflict because our parents were conflict averse, or we never saw conflict successfully get resolved. And, we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But, the problem is when we try to squeeze constructive feedback in between a bunch of positive things, the message can get muddled and people can leave feeling confused. And so maybe you've heard of the sandwich method. And this is a particular strategy of giving feedback. It's something that I used for years, actually. When I was a Toastmaster, this was how we were taught to give people feedback on their talks. And the idea is that you sandwich constructive feedback between two compliments. And it's been shown in research to not be effective, because people are always waiting for the other shoe to drop, and any positive thing comes off as ingenuine. And also, just the human brain has a negativity bias, and so we fixate on the negative thing even if there are a bunch of positives. And so what's better is instead to be direct, to really be straightforward and succinct about what it is that you want to convey. And so I would advise trying that instead of mixing in the constructive feedback with a bunch of positive things. All right, so next question. What if you're worried that someone will respond negatively to feedback? Yeah, they might. And this is the funny thing about feedback. It is that people get so caught up in trying to control other people's emotions. And that's a really stressful thing, because we don't have any control over it. All we have control over is ourselves, our own emotions, how we conduct ourselves. And when you divorce yourself from the idea that you have control, then you can really focus on approaching the situation in the best way, using these three skills that are most likely to have a more successful collaborative conversation, and allow people to be upset or angry or frustrated or whatever it is. And that goes back to empathy, skill number 3. So when you're not trying to change their feeling and you recognize that it's not your problem to fix, then you can put your energy toward other things. And it puts you in a more powerful place. And, just remember that someone probably is gonna have a negative reaction if you're giving them negative feedback. And that doesn't mean anything has gone wrong. Like, let them have their reaction, but just be really clear on your intention and how the feedback can be helpful to them, even if it is temporarily uncomfortable. All right, so next question. How do you give feedback to a manager or someone else above you? Yeah, so in this case, and actually, I would advise this in either way, whether you're giving feedback to someone, who works for you, or whether you're giving feedback to someone who you work for, is I would let people know what you want to talk about so you don't take them by surprise. And then really think about being clear in your message, tuning into your listening skills where you're listening with all of your senses, getting really curious about what they're saying and why they might think that way, asking good questions so you can clear up any, potential misunderstandings, and then offering empathy for their perspective without trying to change it. All right, so the next question, what if you use these skills, but you're still nervous giving constructive feedback to someone on your team? Do it nervous. Don't let nerves be the reason that you let resentment build up and don't solve the problem. When I work with my clients, I share a number of techniques, both physical techniques and mindset techniques, to really help you ground yourself in your body and calm your nerves so that you can be more present for conversations, which again gives you more access to respond in the moment and be creative and use your best problem solving skills. Okay, so next question. What do you do when you're delivering feedback or bad news and people get upset? So again, it requires being willing to upset people and not have that be a reason to change your mind or go back on your decision or your boundary or whatever it is you're conveying. Just to instead, think about being angry or frustrated, like those are natural human emotions, and allowing people to have their human experience. And when you allow that for other people, you get better at allowing that for yourself. And it just it normalizes it. And what I would say is be sure to ground yourself and calm your nerves, because that helps you be less reactive in the moment. All right, so that looks like the last question that I see. So thank you everyone for coming to be confident in difficult conversations. I can't wait to hear how it goes when you take these skills and implement them in your next meeting, your next negotiation, your next feedback conversation. And for anyone who wants more one-on-one help, grab a time to talk to me, find the link in your email for a discovery call, and we will spend an hour together mapping out exactly what's holding you back in your communication at work, how to get past this fear, and the skills that you need to confidently communicate and handle conflicts at work. And it's going to help you whether you decide to work with me or not. Like, just spending 60 minutes with me is going to help you feel more confident that there is a solution, that you can get better at negotiating and giving feedback, and that it's a skill like anything else. So thank you again for joining me today, and go be fierce in your difficult conversations.